When you walk around each day, the ground beneath your feet likely feels reassuringly solid. But that's just an illusion, a comforting falsehood. You see, the center of our planet holds a secret. If you had the time and resources to dig deep below the Earth's crust, sooner or later, you'd find it. A colossal cavern lit by a miniature sun, full of wonders beyond your wildest dreams. Hello and welcome to Z. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. What I've just described aren't my views, but those of a surprising number of people around the world. They believe that the surface of our planet is nothing more than a shell, and inside this hollow casing, all manner of amazing things await us. Exactly what those amazing things might be depends on who you ask. Many hollow Earth theorists claim there's a Garden of Eden-like tropical paradise down there, and most agree that this hidden world is populated, though by whom or what is a topic of debate. Some believe that a technologically advanced race lives there in a city called Agartha. Other suggestions include giants, Nazis, and the lost tribes of Israel. Some even claim that the recent rash of UFO sightings may have come not from outer space but from inner space. If all of this gives you strong flat Earth vibes, you're on the right track. But there's a surprising difference between these two outlandish fringe beliefs. You won't find too many people with an astrophysics degree who believe the Earth is flat. However, the idea that the Earth is hollow has been ardently believed by some of the greatest scientists in history. Modern flat Earth beliefs mostly stem back to the work of an English writer called Samuel Rowbottom, who believed he'd scientifically proven the flatness of our planet with his famous Bedford level experiment. I did a whole video on that recently, so I won't go into detail here, except to say that when it comes to the sharpness of tools and sheds, so to speak, Rowbottom was a sledgehammer. He also believed he'd invented a miracle drug capable of curing any disease. This apparent panacea led to the deaths of several people brave or foolish enough to ingest it, including Rowbottom's own son. In a way, you could argue this cure kind of worked. Corpses are impervious to disease, after all. But the fact their loved ones no longer had that nasty case of herpes probably wasn't much consolation to the devastated relatives. Modern hollow Earth beliefs are usually attributed to an American named John Cleves Sims Jr. born in the late 18th century. Sims made it his life's mission to spread his hollow Earth message far and wide. By the 1820s, he'd become so influential that he nearly convinced the US government to fund an expedition to find the giant entrances to the underworld he believed were located at the poles. But Sims was not the first person to claim the Earth was hollow. Almost every civilization in history has had some concept of a hidden world beneath our feet, from the Aztecs to the Inuits. This idea also appears in nearly every major religion: Hell in Christianity, Sheol in Judaism, Patala in Hinduism, Jahannam in Islam, and Naraka in Buddhism, to name a few. We humans have been kind of obsessed with hollow Earth for a long time. About 350 years ago, something strange happened. Hollow Earth theory stepped out of the realm of myth and religion and found itself uncomfortably close to the cutting edge of science. Modern hollow Earth theory wasn't dreamed up by a child poisoning tool like Samuel Rowbottom. Long before Sims arrived on the scene, the foundations for a hollow Earth had been laid by some of the most brilliant individuals in the history of our species. Probably the first person to investigate the possibility from a purely scientific perspective was German polymath Athanasius Kircher. If Kircher's name sounds familiar, you might have come across him in my video on the world's most mysterious book, the Voynich manuscript. Admittedly, he didn't cover himself in glory in that one, but Kircher is considered one of the greatest thinkers of his age. There's a reason he's often referred to as a master of 100 arts. Well, 99. Just watch the Voynich video. After exploring Mount Vesuvius in 1638, Kircher theorized that all mountains, rivers, and oceans of the Earth were connected below ground by a giant network of navigable caverns filled with fire and water. Kircher's ideas may not resemble modern hollow Earth beliefs, but less than 30 years later, another legendary scientist, Edmund Halley, introduced a theory that's much more familiar to us. Halley was a big deal. He was Britain's second ever royal astronomer, a fellow of the Royal Society, and a good friend of Sir Isaac Newton. He's best known today for being the first person to realize that comets orbit the sun in a predictable way, just like the Earth does. But that's just one of his many contributions to science. In simple terms, Halley was a genius who firmly believed the Earth was hollow. According to Halley's model, our planet's crust is a shell of rock about 500 miles thick, and inside it are two smaller shells surrounding a solid core, like solar system-scale Russian dolls. He believed these shells were surrounded by a breathable atmosphere and were most likely inhabited. He also thought that the northern lights were caused by gas escaping from inside the Earth and interacting with Earth's magnetic field. Several other important scientific thinkers made their own additions to the hollow Earth concept in the centuries after Halley's death, including Scottish physicist Sir John Leslie and the first president of Boston University, William Fairfield Warren. As the theory gained traction, it began cropping up in popular fiction. Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth is the most famous example, but there are literally thousands of stories based on the hollow Earth theme. Even legendary Italian womanizer Casanova got involved, though he populated Earth's core with randy hermaphroditic dwarfs. If you're interested in reading that one, it's called Icosamenron. I thought I'd save you the trouble of Googling randy hermaphroditic dwarfs. Not a good idea. What does all of this mean for hollow Earth theory? Clearly, it's been an important part of culture and religion across the world throughout human history, and some of the greatest geniuses in recent memory have been vocal believers. Is it about time we started taking hollow Earth more seriously? Yeah, no, definitely not. The likes of Kircher and Halley were brilliant men, but they were also people of their time, and much of the science we take for granted today simply didn't exist in the 17th century. The collective knowledge of the human race is like a giant wall. Every generation builds on the work of those who came before, and the scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers who bring original ideas into the world each get to lay a little knowledge brick of their own. The men and women pushing the boundaries today aren't necessarily more intelligent than previous generations. They simply benefit from beginning their journeys much higher up the wall. Halley believed the Earth was hollow because it solved a problem he'd encountered in another area of interest, magnetism. At the end of the 17th century, he set off on a year-long voyage of the Atlantic Ocean to study and map the Earth's magnetic field. The voyage was a huge success, but Halley had expected Earth's magnetic field to be constant and unmoving. A year of taking thousands of compass readings all over the Atlantic showed him that wasn't the case. Hollow Earth theory was his attempt to make sense of experimental results he didn't understand. In other words, it was a hypothesis. If Earth's magnetic field was fluctuating, Halley reasoned that something must be interfering with it, competing magnetic fields from large objects inside the Earth, perhaps. Of course, his hypothesis was completely wrong, but he arrived at it through experimental observation and logical reasoning. He was just a scientist doing science. The fact is, pretty much every brilliant scientist that's ever lived has believed some weird and wonderful things that would sound ridiculous today. Charles Darwin had no idea how genetic inheritance worked despite it being a fundamental part of his theory of evolution, and physicist Lord Kelvin was convinced he'd calculated the exact age of the Earth when he was off by about 4.4 billion years. No doubt the leading scientists of the current generation will be shown to have made major blunders in the not-too-distant future, and hollow Earth theory was undeniably a blunder. These days, there's plenty of evidence that proves beyond doubt that our planet isn't hollow. The fact that we all stick to it through gravity, for one thing. A hollow Earth like the one Sims envisaged would have less than 1% of the mass of a solid sphere, meaning gravity at the surface would be a fraction of what we actually experience. Not to mention, a planet-sized shell of rock 500 miles thick would simply collapse under its own weight. Scientists have determined the composition of the planet by measuring things like Earth's gravity, magnetic field, and the progress of seismic waves as they travel through the ground deep beneath our feet. That's how we know the planet is made up of three main layers: the crust, the mantle, and the core, none of which would make a comfortable home for a giant or a Nazi. There really is no room for ambiguity here. But there is one small problem with all this evidence. It's a bit esoteric, making it fairly easy to dismiss by anyone uninterested in understanding it. Ultimately, the only surefire way to make a hollow Earth believer understand the center of our planet is solid would be to dig a giant hole and send them down there. Of course, they wouldn't get far before the intense heat would literally boil them alive. But hey, sometimes the truth hurts. Thanks for watching.